CEO and president of Auros Knowledge Systems, and he'll give us the inside scoop on what's new with Auros IQ 3, IQ 4, IQ 5, and IQ 6. Look ahead. But first, dun dun dun, we'll have our prize drawing. That's right. We're getting the randomly drawn winner right now. I'm waiting for it to come in. The winner of the Apple Watch Series 6 today is Stephen Reese from ZF. Congratulations, Stephen. Yes, I know. I was clapping loud for Daryl too. All of the cool K-PAC competitors were awesome. I'm just very excited for this whole thing. So, all right, we'll reach out to arrange the shipment of your prize, Stephen. And now, remember, keep your chat open. That's right. Richard says it's Moffa time. Take it away.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate the enthusiasm. Okay, here we go. So it's kind of interesting, you know, when I was laying out this presentation, that I had to put IQ 3, IQ 4, IQ 5, IQ 6. So why is that? Well, if you look at this Gantt chart, comes from a team board. You know, it's a report that gets consolidated on the fly from the different projects, the release projects that we have. And this summary view shows us that you can see we've been able to compress our timing. So, you know, the General Motors folks can tell you, if Wendy was here, she would tell you that, you know, wow, it took 16 months, 18 months between releases. It wasn't an in-control process for you engineers out there, you know, that are out in the manufacturing. There's a big difference between a process that's controlled and not controlled. And in the application of a knowledge-aware technique and good stewardship by Mr. Cullis, we've been able to compress the software development time significantly, and we're getting more content out in a shorter amount of time. And so within the last year, in 2020, IQ 3 was released in January, IQ 4 was released in August, IQ 5 will be in November, and we need to talk a little bit about what's happening in 6, which comes out in February. So you get an idea of why there were so many. So I'm going to kind of take you through the significant changes in each of these releases, some of which you've seen. You might have already got IQ 3. I think almost everybody has IQ 3 already, with one exception. And IQ 4, a lot of people are on IQ 4 already as well. Okay, so let's take a look. IQ 3. Okay, so I'm going to go through these one at a time. Learning cycles, which are based on high cohesion issue clusters, which was released in IQ 2, the high cohesion issue clusters. We have assessment guided tours, proximity search changes, and high cohesion K-PAC clusters, HCIC, HCKC. So we'll talk about those. So the first one is the learning cycles, the first learning cycle based on the source of an issue cluster. So basically, if you went to the advanced sessions yesterday, you kind of saw this live. I'm just going to show you pictures. But basically, a learning cycle is a curated process for identifying a learning opportunity, researching and understanding the background information that's available that supports or denies the opportunity, and inviting people to the process, and then curating it all the way through the creation of another or a new knowledge or modified knowledge packet, right? So in the case of a learning cycle, with its source being an issue cluster, so you see over here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you know the source of this learning cycle is an issue cluster. The issue cluster here has, you know, is all about requery, you can see. So the cluster was automatically created through this AI technique. And then whoever the person is gets notified that there's a learning cycle available, and then the people who have worked on these issues or related K-PACs get invited to join the learning cycle. And then there's a tab for related Auros items. We'll show you the issues and the K-PACs and other items that may influence what the learning is. And then the team is able to draw one or more conclusions, document those conclusions, have work performed out of those conclusions, and potentially have those conclusions drive either change to a K-PAC or new K-PACs. So this is the concept of a learning cycle based on a high cohesion issue cluster. It's a lot of words, but once you get your mind around it, It's pretty straightforward, and it's a great way to ensure that your company is continuously learning and in a systematic and efficient way, without worrying, creating duplicates and all those things, because the system is safeguarding against that process. The learning cycle process is safeguarding about that process. So please type in your questions about learning cycles. I'll ask Amy to, when we're done with IQ3 changes, we'll kind of answer questions about IQ3, and then we'll move on to IQ4 and then so on. So if you have a specific question about learning cycles, go ahead and type it in now. The next change is guided tours. Now, we did have guided tours in IQ2. However, the guided tours in IQ2 were significantly less functional. With assessment guided tours, we added the capability to customize the guided tour specific to the community of practice. And as a couple of the presenters mentioned, the community kind of defines that workflow. So that workflow then can identify the specific help they want new users to see when they open their assessment. And so it kind of walks the user around the assessment and tells them specifically what they need to do to use the assessment in that specific workflow. And this is fundamentally game-changing in the amount of training that's required for non-authors. So if you're not an author, you tend to be a consumer of assessments. And there's basically no training really required anymore. There's a link, you open your assessment, the guided tour tells you what you should do, walks you around, and you're off and running. So just a very important step in the evolution of Auros technology. So there's a lot of other guided tours, but right now in IQ3, we introduced this COP-specific customizable assessment guided tour. The next change was a very large increment to this proximity search technology. So if you recall, Auros gives you this ability if you're looking at a issue or a K-PAC, it says, here are the other semantically similar K-PACs or issues. It is awesome at finding duplicates. It's awesome at finding near common meaning issues in K-PACs. So if you're looking the two big changes here, other than some upgrades to the core algorithms, is the interface. And the interface here is, if you're looking at an issue, there'll be a fly up from the bottom with icons for the issue and K-PAC. And it's looking, if you're here an issue, it's looking for K-PACs and issues with semantically similar text. So here's one about proximity search, and it's finding other issues. Here's the issue tab is open first, and it's finding all the issues with relevancy. And these ones are obviously extremely relevant to the underlying issue. And the idea here, obviously, is if you're solving a problem, you want to know, A, did someone already raise this issue, the exact same one I'm working on? Did someone else solve this problem on a past project? And this does it, right? Or are there related engineering standards or related best practices that this issue should be influenced by? This does that connection for you automatically. It's an extremely powerful technique, and I believe this new user experience and how you interact with it is far better. And for the first time, if you're in it, if you're looking at an issue, it's also showing you K-PACs, and vice versa. If you're looking at a K-PAC, it's also showing you related issues. Okay, so that was a big deal in IQ3, was this visual and algorithmic upgrade to proximity search. Next is high cohesion K-PAC clusters. So I mentioned high cohesion issue clusters were introduced in IQ2. We then took that technology and did it to K-PACs. So what it allows a community to do is, instead of looking at every K-PAC and finding, where the related K-PACs, it's going to calculate clusters so you can visualize and rank order where there's clusters of K-PACs, common topics, possible redundancies, because in the knowledge aware process, you want to eliminate noise in the knowledge base. And there's a variety of tools that Auros gives you to do that, and this is one of them. So now we can start to look at where there may be overlap or conflicting information in knowledge packets about the same topic, because the cluster identifies the AI technique of clustering produces these clusters that can highlight where this might happen. And it helps you create better K-PACs. It helps you to eliminate redundancies. It helps you to eliminate problems and maybe identify where new K-PACs should be authored. So the Cohesion clusters is a separate interface that lists clusters independently. So if you look at this first row, there's a cluster ID, its average strength, how closely packed are the knowledge packets in the cluster, the number of K-PACs that are in the cluster, this is the third column, the centroid, what K-PAC is in the middle of that cluster, and then it gives it the K-PAC type and the K-PAC description. Extremely valuable tool in producing insights about the knowledge base. So in my first presentation yesterday, I talked a lot about how we need to produce insights from the data. This is a great way of doing that, right? And if you're at a document level where there's lots of different topics in the same document, it's virtually impossible to do that. Okay, so any questions about IQ3 that I can answer before we go into IQ4?
I don't see any questions specific to IQ3, just some comments about the user interface improving greatly over recent years.
Fantastic. Well, I'll move on to save time, and if you think of one, we'll go back. But please feel free to type in questions as we go. So in IQ4, we took the new high cohesion K-PAC clusters that we created in IQ3, and we made that a source of learning cycles. So that's the first thing we did. The next is this idea of method user experience, and I will be very heavy-handed. I think this is an extremely important change in Auros, and I'll talk about that in a second. Improvements to the value table editor. You know, you heard a lot of presentations talking about the knowledge modeling capabilities of value tables, and it finally got an uplift in IQ4 user experience. And then a very important new feature called partner sharing, and I'll talk about that. So first, hey, I don't have to go into this detail. It looks just like the issue-based cluster learning cycle. So it looks just like any learning cycle, but now its source is a K-PAC cluster. Okay, and I think the picture here is actually showing the Auros-related items instead of the source, but you get the idea. It is now the K-PAC clusters, the high cohesion K-PAC clusters, are being identified as a source for learning opportunity. The people are being invited to examine it. People can opt in or opt out, and if people opt in and someone claims the lead, we start working on it, and we drive to a conclusion of action or no action taken, and then there's dispensation of that learning cycle. And we can quantify them, we can see them. There's a dashboard for an individual to show all the learning cycles they've been invited to. There's an administrative dashboard for it. I didn't want to spend too much time on learning cycles because we can do specific demonstrations for you if that's what you're interested in. Okay, I do want to spend a little more time on this one. So in IQ4, we introduced step types. And step types are really, really an important innovation because they enable us to automate the behaviors and eliminate a lot of clicks in using K-PAC methods. So you see in the lower right a K-PAC method, and in the upper left is the editing environment for the step. And the step, one of the primary features now is this idea of a step type. So the author of the method is saying this step is intended to be in the method for information purposes, or to branch logic, or to calculate something, or to house an assessment or standard work, or to be broken up into smaller methods, or to raise issues. And in defining the author in defining it intent, we're able to automate a lot of processes, especially around the creation of assessments that are supposed to be created for a step. There's a lot of clicks taken out. It improves the user experience. It improves a lot of aspects of using methods to drive processes. So you'll notice in the view, the step type icon is always visible in the upper right-hand corner. And you can interact with the step by going through this icon and understanding, you know, okay, this step, the author is intending me to create an issue. This step, the author is intending me to create an assessment. And the automation of the creation assessment will be there. There's a lot of automation that we're not showing in these screens that the author of the method can set up to help that end user, you know, quickly do their work. And that's what the name of the game is. So that's the big change in IQ4 for methods. I believe that this is a very important change, mostly because, as you know, we use Auros a lot at Auros Knowledge Systems, and this helps us. This helps us do a lot of things. So we ourselves are big fans of this particular feature. Then I mentioned the value table editor. So this is kind of the interface for creating the knowledge models. Darwin talked a lot about creating value tables at Spirit Aerospace to drive automated process planning. Nicole talked a little bit about it interfacing with CAD. I think everybody actually talked about value tables in some way. And it's a differentiating part of the Auros technology. And the value tables are models of knowledge that can drive digital systems. Obviously, Dan Cronin talked a lot about it from ABS and how the engineering standards can be driven through value tables. So it was in need for an uplift or a facelift for a long time. So I think the team at Auros did a really good job of improving the usability in the editing environment of value tables. Other than the improvement in visual layout, is this idea of being able to test the rule that you create without ever leaving the editing environment. In previous versions of Auros, you had to save it and then test it. Now you can click the lightning bolts and test your rule. You'll get what we call the rule processing interface. The rules engine will run, it'll disaggregate the rule and construct an interface on the fly to that rule that you can test the rule before publishing it. Right? Important feature. So that's the big thing here. The layout change and the ability to test and play with the rule prior to publishing it. Okay? And lastly, and probably the biggest change in terms of code footprint, it's a seismic change. So the partner sharing interface is not the same as our partner portal. So let me explain. The Auros Partner Portal allows a company to share their K-PACs and assessments with the supply chain, with a customer, with external entities. So when that happens, people from outside the organization are working through a limited interface with your K-PACs and assessments. That's the Partner Portal. That's been around for a while. Partner sharing is different. Partner sharing is going to control and modulate the leasing of knowledge packets and communities from one Auros instance to another Auros instance. So you may be an OEM and you may want to share knowledge packets with a joint venture that's engineering a vehicle on your behalf, but your engineering standards need to be observed. And instead of them coming to your partner portal, you're going to share those K-PACs and they can then reuse them in all the ways they need to throughout their engineering chain. You may be a standards organization and want to share engineering standards to multiple customers. And so, in the ABS kind of idea, different shipyards could be leasing engineering standard K-PACs through this interface and always be synchronized to the engineering standards that are published by the engineering standards organization. And it's a bidirectional interface that can go both directions. So, in the interface here, you're seeing there's an outbound sharing and an inbound sharing. Currently, outbound sharing is selected, and you have the individual communities that are sharing K-PACs, and there's a way to select which K-PACs within that community get shared. Not all of them have to be shared. And the elements in each of those K-PACs that are shared, so it's pretty surgical. And then you see some information about when it was last shared, when it was sent, and the status, and you can actually view the data file that actually got sent, right, for reasons of audit. So in this case, there are 5 communities that are getting shared to a particular partner, and you can view all that and which partners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So each row would be a COP and an outbound partner to be shared with, and they each can share different elements of the K-PACs, different K-PACs in the community can be shared. It's a pretty cool feature. Okay, so that's it for IQ4. Do we have any questions that I can field on IQ3 or IQ4 on any of these features?
Indeed, we do. Bridget is asking, or saying, first of all, very excited to use method step types, and asking, how is the step type populated when moving from IQ3 to IQ4 or later? And will existing methods still function properly?
Okay, Bridget, that is a great question. I'm probably not the best one to answer that specific question, but I have the basics for you. We designed it to function properly, but we can't assume we know what the author's intent was for step type. So I believe so if there was a value table and assessment creation kinds of devices in the step prior to the step type, those will still be there. And I believe we have it show up as a basic step. And then the author, so the functions that was there aren't lost, but there's an uplift if you then edit the method and pick a step type. I mean, that is a really good question. There's lots of legacy methods out there that will be better off if they then go back, if the authors go back and identify the specific step type. But the conversion from 3 to 4 won't inhibit the use in the way that it was used prior. You just won't have the efficiencies that the improvement offer. And Josh or any of the team, if you want to comment on that question, if I didn't get that exactly right, just comment on that question, please.
Perfect. So Darwin wonders, is anyone using Auros to deliver training material?
Is anyone using Auros to deliver training material? I mean, we do ourselves. Mm-hmm. Josh team uses Auros to train new application engineers. I think there's quite a few of those footprints. Maybe Josh, you want to comment on that particular question? Darwin, I think Josh is in the best position to answer that. I'd say definitely there are those use cases, but I can't pull other than our own use of doing training. Maybe Josh can give you specific detail.
Well, now I see Wendy commented from GM and says that they have their interface control document training stored in a COP in the ICD area for easy access for the users.
Right.
There you go. Okay, we definitely have some more questions. Nicole is wondering, do both OEM and supplier need to be using the same version of Auros to partner share?
That is a great question, Nicole. It is highly recommended. And if you're going to be out of sync, we would have to, verify that those conditions are working. Right now, we are not doing every permutation because there's an abstraction of XML files in between. There may be limited functionality when they are of different versions. So for now, I'll say it's highly recommended that in the partner sharing exchange that both partners are on the same version of Auros, but technically, it probably works pretty well without being on exactly the same version. There may be some data that gets lost if data elements are new, for example.
Okay, and I see a couple more questions about partner sharing. Okay. One thing looks good, but how do you control the confidential point, especially for this partner sharing area? Is there any special control?
Right. So that's a great question, and that was fundamentally what we thought about from the get-go. So the ability to share is limited to a very limited role. Basically, the top-level administrator in Auros is the only one who can initiate the sharing. We may open it up more down the road, but right now we've been restrictive for just to be cautious. Then, when you establish a sharing relationship, there are specific ways to segregate out K-PACs in that community to be included or not included in the share. And you can also select the elements within the K-PAC, the specific, subunits in a K-PAC that are shared. So some care needs to be taken when you're setting up the sharing relationship to make sure you're not sharing sensitive information. But if you do that, then it's a very secure way of sharing because the only bits that you specifically said I want to share get shared through the partner sharing relationship.
Okay. Now, see if we haven't covered this one yet. Carlo is wondering, is partner sharing a one-shot information dump sharing, or does it remain active until turned off?
It remains active until it's turned off. There's a way of setting up the frequency of update. By default, it's nightly.
Okay. And Susan is asking, what types of automation are available when utilizing step types, in particular the assessment step types?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of opportunity to do the configuration. So if you have a step type of assessment, the author now can specify you want the end user to create the assessment from a specific set, from a filter query, from a specific K-PAC. And all that automation is on this. Once you select this, I didn't show the screenshot, but once you select the step type of assessment, there's a whole bunch of sub menus that come up for the author of the step of the method to define the process by which that assessment, that intended assessment, gets created. And that does take out a ton of clicks in the process for the end user who's creating the assessment. Did I answer that question correctly? I think I understood the question, but
Okay. We'll look for a comment if anything comes through. And in the meantime, another question about partner sharing. Partner sharing is Auros instance to Auros instance, or can it be used for partners that do not have Auros?
Right. So great question. It is Auros instance to Auros instance.
Okay.
I can imagine a way it could be used otherwise, consuming the data file that it shares. But the partner sharing is Auros instance to Auros instance. The partner portal only requires the outside entity to have internet access to the portal. And there's ways that we allow it to be configured that only certain people from certain suppliers can get into the portal. But in that case, they're using your Auros instance. So partner sharing and partner portal are two very different mechanisms to share knowledge.
Okay. Now, Nate at Herman Miller is asking, is the difference between partner portal and is the difference between partner portal and partner sharing? Partner portal is like giving someone access to your knowledge library, but it's up to them to seek out and use it. And partner sharing is giving them a copy of your knowledge into their library, so it's automatically integrated into their Auros system?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically correct, other than the partner portal does a lot more than saying, hey, you can come search, right? You can define specific assessments for people to fill out, and they'll get a notification they've got an assessment ready, right? So you got a supplier, and the supplier needs to, verify that they're ready for production through some knowledge assessment. And you can create that, and there's ways we can automate that. They'll get an email. They click the link, it'll take them to the partner portal, and your assessment will show up there. If they've got all the credentials set, they can open up the assessment, and they're working on an assessment that you've assigned them, right? So they don't have to search. There's still this idea of provisioning the right thing, and there's lots of ways to automate that process. So by and large, the partner portal doesn't require them to come in and search and just look around. It encourages more of an active kind of interface. It also allows them to raise issues and work with issues and different things like that. As you said, I think you did a good job of summarizing the partner portal. The partner portal says, I don't know how, or the partner sharing, I'm sorry. The partner sharing says, I don't know how you want to use these K-PACs. You just have to, you're going to benefit from them. So I'm going to lease them to you. Here, partner, here they are. Now you can do, you can integrate them and mix them with your own K-PACs. You can tie them together so that when ours changes, yours needs to change. Or these are the three methods you use to verify our K-PAC, which is a requirement. I mean, there's lots of different use cases. And sharing allows the customer to define how they use it. Partner portal allows you to define how they use it.
Okay. So do you have more in your presentation? Because I don't see any additional questions. Okay, perfect.
Okay, so let's move on. IQ5. IQ5 is our first 3-month cycle process. We went from 16, 18 months, and now we're down to 3-month cycle times. These are the primary ones. I'll get into them one at a time. Another long overdue user experience facelift is in the parameter view of assessments. So those of you that are familiar with value tables, when you have value tables in your assessment, Auros is able to disaggregate the K-PACs and accumulate all the K-PACs that use parameters. And 2 different K-PACs may use the same parameter, so that's kind of inconvenient. So we show the parameter view, Those of you that do a lot of CAD work know that parameter sheets are common. This is like an auto-generated parameter sheet for a topic. And it's basically like pulling out the parameterizations of the knowledge models and value tables in the K-PACs and presenting it in a comprehensive parameter sheet view. So there's just a much better user experience in IQ5 around the parameter view in an assessment. So you can see in assessment, you can view in the upper left, you see there's a header view, the line item view, which is most people are used to, and then the parameter view basically is a complete disaggregation of the knowledge packets and creating a parameter sheet on the fly from those knowledge packets. And then you can interact. It's not just a report. You can interact. You can add values, and it will cause conformances and non-conformance to change both in line item view at the K-PAC level as well as on the parameter sheet at a parameter level. Those of you that are into KB, this is a really cool feature, not found. I've never seen anybody else doing this. Managing parameters and parameter instances is a pretty complicated set of interactions. Okay. The next is method user experience. I got a question yesterday about the checkpoint. That's just one of the kinds of user interfaces, user experience updates we did in IQ5. I very much appreciate that, you know, as a company, we're trying really hard. We put emphasis on user experience in methods because we believe it's a differentiating and important part of the knowledge-aware approach, part of the knowledge, the Auros technology. And so one of the changes is the idea of the visual change of the checkpoint types. So now instead of just having one kind of flag, you have now we have the due date, the relative offset, and the basic. The functions were always there. You could do those things, but now they're visualized in a different way. And the team's done a really good job of allowing the editing environment to be more intuitive. What are you really doing? And so the team's done a really good job assisting the author in creating a logical model of a process without having to be an expert in process model.
And Jeff, just a heads up, we have less than 8 minutes left for everything to wrap here, okay, including the words you want to say and my words. So.
Okay, all right, so let's get going. So there's upgrades to KPIs. I won't get into it. More KPI functions around key performance indicators. The one that most people have been asking about is, what is a document ingester? Okay, what it does is it takes a PDF or other document and it uses some machine learning technology to identify text, sections of text, tables, parameters, equations, and it's able to take out of the document and create knowledge packets from it on the fly. And it's able to create a pointer back to the point in the document where it was created. So there's a whole variety of uses for this. If you're a supplier and you get your requirements in PDF, this does it. I use it because I get legal and contractual requirements in terms of terms and conditions, and I create knowledge packets for each of the terms and conditions so I can track and manage compliance to our legal and contractual requirements with you guys, with our customers. There's just a lot of different, you may have standards libraries that you want to quickly create knowledge packets from. This is a great tool to do that. So the interface you see in the upper left is actually IQ6 and not IQ5. So the core machine learning technology and machine learning stack that we're going to use is in place in IQ5. The fancy user interface that allows it to be quite easy to interact with won't be published into IQ6. Okay, that's what I have for what's new in IQ5 and IQ6. So I'd be happy to take questions, but I want to take just 3 minutes and thank the cool K-PAC contestants. I agree with Josh. It's one of my favorite things every year, and their participation is greatly appreciated. And you know, all three of you guys did a great job in creating very cool K-PACs. I look forward to it again next year. And I have to say, this year's presenters were the best. They were absolutely awesome, and I want to thank them for their contribution. I think each presentation revealed a bit of a different dimension of knowledge aware, and seen as a whole, it kind of paints that big and expanding picture that I hope people got out of this conference. You know, Jeff Mayhew did a good job of sharing the KM maturity model and Navistar's journey towards a robust knowledge operating system. He also showed, you know, a solid, you know, the Navistar had how a solid vision like the gold source of knowledge can drive a large organization to change towards a knowledge-aware vision. Josh from Auros Knowledge System explained how, how a relatively small company like Auros can leverage knowledge aware and knowledge enable almost every process that we have. Dan Cronin revealed AVS's vision for the digital distribution of regulatory standards and the potential efficiency that can be gained with the digitization of standards and in the propagation and integration into model-based environments. Nicole described GM's enterprise-wide journey for knowledge aware and used the maturity model as a yardstick, similar to the way Jeff did, and gave very specific evidence of value achieved in applying knowledge aware concepts for seed engineering and peer review at GM. Darwin, wow. Darwin provided, in-depth expertise and a view on how Spirit Aerosystems is approaching automated work instructions. He did a great job of laying out the challenges that are involved and the value potential in solving those complex problems. Darwin has this expertise, in knowledge representation, and that domain was specifically helpful to me. So again, I think the quality of presentation was very high and uniform across all the presenters, and I want to personally thank them for presenting at the conference. Amy?
Awesome. Okay, so I have copied and pasted the survey link, which I ask you to do the same for Jeff's session. And then I'm going to actually see if I can share my screen while yours is, I don't know if it's going to work. Oh, it did. That's great. Okay, cool. It took over. So I just had a couple slides to go through here. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for coming. It's been absolutely fantastic to be with you. And I'd like to ask you to fill out the post-conference survey. This is really the most important one that we want you all to please fill out. Please copy and paste the link that I just put in the chat. It's the overall conference survey, and we really do look at these, and the folks in the team takes it very seriously for planning for next year. So I'd also like to give some more quick shout outs to IKAA, International Knowledge Aware Association, for putting this together. We've got the IKAA board, Marcus Fisher from ZF TRW, Jeff Moffa from Auros, Wendy Lang from General Motors, and Brittany Satterfield from Auros. And then, of course, we have our corporate sponsor, Auros. And we have the virtual booth sponsor, Cinequa. We would like to invite you to, Tim Glau from Caterpillar as well. Okay, good. I'm just getting that note to add. Perfect. Thank you. We want to make sure we thank everyone properly. Okay, let's all have our fingers crossed next year at the 2021 Knowledge Aware Conference, September 27th and 28th, 2021 at the Inn at St. John's in Plymouth, Michigan. Please continue to interact with one another using the chat window. And of course, you can visit our virtual booths during and after the session today and get resources. So once again, thank you for coming. Watch for emails in the coming weeks for recordings of the conference. Please take that overall post-conference survey. Oh, thank you, Victoria, for your kind words. And the conversation does continue in the virtual roundtables next, starting at 12:15. You can choose which one you want to go to. We have design review with Nicole Nicholas at GM, and we have uses and quality with Jeff Moffa, or Auros Getting Started Seed Projects with Josh, okay? And that one is going to be on Zoom as well, just like we did our session with Darwin. So you'll click on the schedule, pick your session that you want to go to out of the three, and then just click the Zoom link and you'll be able to go in there. And if you want to turn your camera on, that might be kind of fun for a roundtable, but you don't have to. All right, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and see you later. Have a great rest of your day. Go to those roundtables now.